Welcome everyone to episode 3 of the Patel Kumar Show. I am Shivam Patel coming to you live from San Antonio, Texas. And I'm my co-host, Mr. Kumar, coming to you live from Mumbai, India. What's good, Mr. Kumar?
Well, everything is good because the NBA regular season is almost over and we are heading to the playoffs. So I'm so excited. I didn't expect that we would be here covering the NBA when the lockdown happened, but it's just so nice to see the regular season coming to an end. It's been a long season, but it's a great start for us. So welcome everyone to the Patel and Kumar NBA Talk Show, and this is Vinod Muthukumar as Mr. Kumar on the Patel and Kumar Show. Let's get going, Mr. Patel.
Yes, and we got an exciting show planned for you today. Today we're going to talk about the NBA Weekly Recap, and in there, me and Mr. Kumar are going to give our top 5 players, best players and worst players in the bubble, so be sure not to miss that. In our Indian Tadka segment, we have a special interview with Indian basketball player Inderbir Singh and our discussion, should Indian origin players be allowed to play for the national team? And lastly, we'll get you ready for the week coming up with our picks for our marquee matchups. So let's get started. Are you ready, Mr. Kumar?
I was born ready, Mr. Patel.
All right. So our first topic, let's start with the Eastern Conference. So Mr. Kumar, which games or teams have taken your attention in the Eastern Conference so far this week?
Definitely the two teams that stand out for me are Boston and Toronto. Toronto has been consistent. They are 6-1, in this bubble. And last week, Boston had a good run. They won 4 games on the trot. So they're trying to get into some kind of momentum. And of course, now that the top 8 seeds are pretty much locked in the East, so there's not much going to happen in the next 2 days. And of course, there's no play-in tournament as well in the East. So it all boils down to now who's got the momentum and who's ready more for the playoffs. So, of course, Milwaukee Bucks is not going to have Giannis because he's got banned for headbutting Mo Wagner there in the last game against Washington. Looks like he was trying to play some soccer out there.
Yeah, he's from Greece, so he got his inner soccer player, I guess. And I think, one game is not going to be a big difference because he was going to rest anyways. But I am a little bit worried about the Bucks because, they did lose to the Mavericks. They barely beat, their last couple of opponents. And the Bucks really need to play better. And it kind of starts with Giannis Antetokounmpo. But I think in his defense, I think he's just getting ready for the playoffs, and I think he'll be more focused. But the others around the Bucks really need to step up, and that's in making shots because the whole focus on the defense is going to be on Giannis Antetokounmpo. So those other guys need to be ready to catch and shoot and make an impact. But I'm also very impressed with the Boston Celtics. I think they're rounding into form. Gordon Hayward has been playing really well for them. I think he's accepted his role, and he's going to be a third scorer off of that for them. Jaylen Brown has been arguably their best player in the bubble. If he can continue playing that way in the playoffs, watch out for the Boston Celtics. Jason Tatum, I'm not worried about. He's going to have plenty of help. But then the health of Kemba Walker is the big question. But I've been definitely impressed with the Boston Celtics so far, beating the Toronto Raptors, Orlando Magic, and then beating the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, and I feel very sorry for a team like Philadelphia 76ers because Ben Simmons is out for the season. Embiid is not healthy either. I mean, they pretty much built this team around these two talented, basketball players. But I think the chemistry hasn't really worked for the Philadelphia 76ers. And I think they got to do a lot of hard thinking at the end of this season in terms of what direction they really want to take. Because they started with the process, but they did kind of a little bit of success with the process. But that process now needs to change.
Yes, and I think it's just a whole spacing issue because, Joel Embiid likes to shoot a lot of threes, doesn't really get in the post very much. Al Horford, who's an inside post player, and Ben Simmons, he doesn't even take jump shots. So spacing issue has been a problem. They needed to surround this team with more shooters. Tobias Harris, who they paid a lot of money to, and them getting rid of Jimmy Butler. That was a kind of a mistake, even though he's had some nice games. So I think the Sixers are just a team of a bunch of misfits. Like you said, the chemistry hasn't been right. They've been pretty good on the defensive end. That's not their problem. But as you know, Mr. Kumar, in today's NBA, defense will get you far, but offense will ultimately win you the title and get you where you want to be. And I think the offense is lacking for the 76ers. Joel Embiid had an ankle injury a couple of days ago, but I think having conspiracy theories, I think the Sixers don't want to take a chance, especially with Brett Brown's job on the line. I think he's just waiting to rest Embiid till the playoffs because they're already without Ben Simmons, and they want to make sure he's 100%. Because as you know, without Joel Embiid, even though there's talent on the Sixers team with Josh Richardson and Tobias Harris, the Sixers team is not going to go anywhere without Joel Embiid. And that first round matchup for the Boston Celtics, the 3 and the 6 against the Philadelphia 76ers, is looking more favorable for the Boston Celtics every day as it goes on.
Yeah, now let's move on to the West. It's pretty much locked up there as well, except for that 8th seed. I think there's going to be a huge competition. There are 4 games that are going to be played tomorrow, and all 4 teams, I mean, they're in the reckoning for that 8th seed play-in tournament. Of course, Portland Trailblazers is on 8th position right now. Then it's Memphis, and then it's Phoenix Suns and the San Antonio Spurs.
Oh, the mighty West, Mr. Kumar. It always goes down to the last day, the most competitive conference. And let me just tell you that Portland Trailblazers Dallas Mavericks game was fire. Damian Lillard ended up tying for a career high 61 points. The shot making in that game was just insane on both ends of the floor. And Damian Lillard willed the Portland Trailblazers to victory. All they need to do is just beat the Brooklyn Nets today, which have been playing a lot better. So that's not going to be a pushover game to make the play-in tournament. And the real question is, can the Memphis Grizzlies beat the Milwaukee Bucks today, or will the Phoenix Suns continue their Cinderella magical run and make it to the play-in tournament? But Mr. Kumar, I'm not going to lie to you. As much as I love Coach Jenkins and the Memphis Grizzlies, without Jaren Jackson Jr., they're not the same. So I would love to see the the Phoenix Suns and the Portland Trailblazers play for the play-in tournament. There's going to be a shootout between Devin Booker and Damian Lillard. Both teams like to play fast-paced, shoot a lot of threes, and that's going to be must-see basketball.
Absolutely. I'm emotional towards Memphis Grizzlies, of course, because Taylor Jenkins is a very good friend, but ultimately they haven't played great basketball during this bubble. So if they have to blame somebody, it's themselves. Of course, Jaren Jackson Jr. got injured, so it's a little bit of a tough situation for a young team like Memphis, because they were sitting very pretty and tight on that 8th position. So yeah, it just boils down to tomorrow. Portland plays Brooklyn, maybe an easy game for them. Memphis plays Milwaukee, a little bit tough, but maybe they can do it because Giannis is banned for 1 game. Utah is playing San Antonio Spurs, and the Dallas Mavericks plays the Phoenix Suns. So, I mean, they have a chance to go 8-0, the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, who would have expected that coming in? Phoenix Suns have been a great story. They played well together, and I think they're going to really building on the future. But the Portland Trailblazers, as Damian Lillard said, we're not going to waste our time. I think they were focused and ready, to come in and conquer that 8th seed. And I'm impressed by Damian Lillard after missing those 2 big free throws against the LA Clippers that would have given them a victory. The Clippers were literally trying to hand the Blazers a victory. But the Portland Trailblazers have really played really well and really responded. But Mr. Kumar, this is exactly what the NBA wanted the last day. All the teams tied 4 marquee games. Who's going to get that 8th seed? Make sure everybody stay tuned and watch, because those games are going to be crazy, a lot on the line. And this is even before the playoffs are going to start. So I'm just so excited. For me, it's morning here in the U.S. I'm going to be glued to my TV the rest of the day.
Absolutely. So let's just look at the playoff scenario, or what it looks like. Let's discuss the marquee games that we had picked last week. And look at there. I think somebody just picked all the games right. I mean, does that say Kumar's pick 7-0?
Oh man, congratulations, Mr. Kumar. You did go 7-0. Props, but I'm waiting for the playoffs. These seeding games are not really that important. The playoffs is what it matters, and I'll get you back, Mr. Kumar, in the playoffs. Don't worry.
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, you're going to say that because you got like 4 of them wrong or right there, and I'm 7-0. So let's keep a count on that at the
All
end
right.
of this regular season, because we have picked 5 more games for this week. So we'll tally up the scores in the next episode. Thank you to our viewers who are tuning in. Gayatri Joshi, thank you very much. Hope you keep tuning in to our show every week. But let's now look at the playoff scenario, because everything is pretty much locked and loaded except for that 8th seed in the West. So I mean, I think the Lakers are going to really have a tough time, because most likely they're going to play the Portland Trail Blazers in the first round. It's going to be a huge challenge on who comes out between OKC and Houston. So yeah, I mean, they're going to have pretty much tough 3 rounds if it is predicted that they're going to meet the LA Clippers in the Western Conference Finals.
It is. This Western Conference is going to be very tough, especially, for the Lakers. And, even the Clippers, they got the Dallas Mavericks in the first round. That's not going to be an easy matchup because, as you saw, Kristaps Porzingis and Luka Doncic could definitely go off, and they're a great tandem, and they have great chemistry together. And the Dallas Mavericks are the #1 offense in the NBA, so they're definitely going to score a lot of points and test this Clippers defense. But the Clippers, they're not too shabby. They can also score with the Dallas Mavericks. But that's not going to be an easy series for the Clippers, but it's definitely going to be a fun series for the fans. Can't wait. I don't think the Mavericks are going to get the upset, but Mr. Kumar, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes 6 or 7 games this series, especially, with the no fans and the Clippers not having home court advantage. But the matchup that really gets my attention is the Oklahoma City Thunder against the Houston Rockets. Man, the storylines in this game are going to be crazy. Russell Westbrook going back to OKC, or playing against his former team, the Oklahoma City Thunder. James Harden and Chris Paul facing each other after they were teammates for a couple of years. I think that series is going to be very intense, and it's going to be a lot on the line. And I think that series is going to, Oklahoma City Thunder really have a chance to upset the Houston Rockets because just of their playing style and the great defense that the Oklahoma City Thunder play.
Well, yeah, I mean, as expected, the Eastern Conference, I mean, the rankings were pretty much locked and loaded much before the bubble started, and there's not been too many surprises there. Milwaukee Bucks is going to play the lowly Orlando Magic, Miami Heat and Indiana Pacers, and then Philadelphia 76ers, of course. So I mean, we didn't expect too many twists in the Eastern Conference, but Western Conference, as you said, the first round between OKC and Houston is going to be a great storyline, as well as, I think, who comes up on the 8th position to play the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yes, and if it is the Portland Trail Blazers, I think they got a real shot. They might not win the series, but they could definitely take a bite out of the Lakers and extend the series to 6 or 7 games because, as you know, Dame time, one of the clutchest players in the NBA, Yusef Nurkic, Zach Collins, playing well as well, CJ McCollum. So I think the Portland Trailblazers, who had championship expectations coming into the season, will definitely give the Lakers a scare. But let me just talk about the Eastern Conference playoff matchups just real quick. Like I said, that Philadelphia-Boston series is not going to be as interesting as we thought, because of Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons are going to be out. But the Milwaukee Bucks and the Toronto Raptors are going to have pretty easy series the first round compared to the Lakers or the Clippers. And I think the Milwaukee Bucks will be able to get their rhythm back. Giannis will be able to, kind of get his footing, be able to get that confidence to be able to play well for the rest of the playoffs. And hopefully those role players will be able to contribute and really be able to help Giannis out.
Well, let's, by the time we come back for the live show next week, the playoffs would have already started because it starts August 17th. The first round playoffs. The play-in tournament is on the 15th and 16th, so we'll come to know who's the 8th seed in the West then. But let's move on to our main section, which is who are the bubble stars and the bubble bus in the last 2 weeks. So, of course, Mr. Patel, what do you have to say?
So in this segment, this is not necessarily the top stars, but the players that are playing the best in the bubble, that are having good stats on both ends of the floor and that are impacting their team on winning. So this list, me and Mr. Kumar, I'm pretty sure are going to have different lists. But my number 5, it starts with Gary Trent Jr. And I know many people may not know who he is. He plays on the Blazers. He's had some insane shooting games. He had 2 games, made 7 threes. 1 game, made 6 threes. He's been a great floor spacer for the Portland Trailblazers, and he's playing out of his mind. Number 4, his teammate, Jusuf Nurkic. Many of you may have forgotten about him because he was injured most of the season, but he's playing at an all-star level, dominating inside the paint, playing great defense, a great shot blocking, rebounding presence. So Jusuf Nurkic is number 4. Number 3, the Cinderella story, the Phoenix Suns. Devin Booker has had 2 35-point game, a 30-point game, shooting 50% from the field. He's just been insane. His shot making has been incredible, and he's really carrying the Suns on the precipice of the 8th seed. Number 2, Luka Doncic's running mate, Kristaps Porzingis. He's averaging about 30 points a game in the bubble. He's been shooting well from 3. He has a great pick and pop with Luka Doncic. And number 1 is T.J. Warren, who started the bubble scoring 53 points against the Philadelphia 76ers, followed that up with a 39-point game, 34-point game. He's been carrying the Indiana Pacers, who have a 4-2 record, and carrying the slack for Victor Oladipo and without Domantas Sabonis. So T.J. Warren is my number 1 player in the bubble right now. Mr. Kumar, what do you think about that?
Well, a surprising list to say, because you don't have Dame Lillard out there in your top 5. I mean, that's really surprising. You have Gary Trent Jr., who was his teammate, but you don't have Dame Lillard. Wow, that's whack.
Well, Dame Lillard has had a lot of help, with Zach Collins, Jusuf Nurkic, and Gary Trent. And Dame Lillard is number 6 for me, because even though he's been playing great, he did miss those 2 crucial free throws against the Los Angeles Clippers, so I can't ignore that. But he's had a lot of help, and it's been a team collective effort, for the Blazers, even though he did carry his team to victory against the Dallas Mavericks. And I'll give you this, Mr. Kumar, without Damian Lillard's 61 points, they needed every single basket from him. Otherwise, they would not have beaten the Dallas Mavericks. And who knows what position they would have been in going into this last week of the season.
Well, let's look at, my list. And my number 5 is, a surprising choice, but it's Chris Paul. I know he hasn't played absolutely great basketball, but I chose him because he's one of the person that we need to thank for this bubble experiment as the president of the NBA Players Association. He did a great job. Giannis Antetokounmpo, he didn't miss a beat. He's averaging 31 points and 13 rebounds, and he's still playing 30 minutes. So it's going to go up as come playoffs, because he's playing like an MVP. I have T.J. Warren in number 3. You had him number 1, and the same reasons. I mean, he's had absolutely amazing basketball games, a 53-point game, and then, of course, a great game to beat the Los Angeles Lakers as well. In number 2, I have Devin Booker. Of course, nobody can forget that fantastic buzzer beater against LA Clippers. I think he was guarded like a prisoner out there, but still, he made that, and that was just amazing. He's playing absolutely great basketball. And number 1 is Dame time, let me tell you, Mr. Patel, because he's having an amazing bubble. Because his last game was just superlative to beat the Dallas Mavericks, 61 points. And he's in great company now, because he's the only other player apart from Will Chamberlain to have 3 60-point games in a single season. So he's coming back from another 50-point game before, and now a 61-point game. He tied his career high, and it's just been absolutely amazing basketball. And of course, he's having a lot of beef outside the court as well, with a lot of players like Paul George, Patrick Beverley. So I think he's just silenced them a little bit.
And he also silenced Skip Bayless, who questioned, whether Damian Lillard is clutch and he can carry this Portland Trailblazers team. But he got the last laugh on Skip Bayless. As many of you may know, he also hates on LeBron. So this is not surprising. He has his players that he likes and he doesn't. But yeah, Dame Lillard has been incredible, amazing. But I think the Portland Trailblazers had expectations coming into this bubble. So and we do agree that Devin Booker and T.J. Warren are both top 5 players. So I'm glad we're able to agree on that. But Devin Booker, I think, has been more impressive because the Suns didn't have any expectations coming into this restart. Everyone thought they were just there to pass time, that they were just going to lose like almost every game, and they weren't going anywhere. But Devin Booker has really catapulted the Suns on the precipice of the 8th seed, and the Suns have a really bright future. And Suns are one of the most fun teams to watch in the bubble, and definitely a lot of people have gained the Suns have gained a lot of people's respect and eyeballs, and so has Devin Booker by his insane performances.
Absolutely. So let's look at what the audience had to say. We ran a poll to see who they thought was the best player in the bubble. And by a huge margin, most people chose Devin Booker. And of course, Nurkic follows Devin Booker as well. So as you said, I mean, Devin Booker has been one of the greatest finds in this bubble. Of course, there's been debate where Draymond Green said that he should move out of Phoenix Suns and go to a team which is a winning team. But I think this is a young Phoenix Suns team, and once Kelly Oubre comes back, I think they'll probably come into the playoffs next season on their own merit rather than having to fight for it at the end of the season.
Yes, and like you said, Devin Booker, he can stay in Phoenix and build around this team because they have DeAndre Ayton, who was the #1 pick a couple years ago, Kelly Oubre, they have Dario Saric, Ricky Rubio is playing well. And also, this Phoenix team, they would not have been in this position but because early in the season, they did blow a lot of games that they should have won. So maybe they would have been, closer to Memphis. So the Phoenix, if they don't make the playoffs, they have themselves to blame. But, props to Devin Booker, who's really been able to do a great job of carrying this Phoenix team. They've beaten they have beaten every team. They're 7-0 in the bubble. They just got to win one more game and hope that either the Spurs or the Grizzlies lose, which is definitely possible. So props to the Phoenix Suns, and what an incredible run. And we're always going to remember the Phoenix Suns this year as one of the most surprising teams to come out of the bubble.
So yeah, I mean, now that we have discussed the best performances or the best bubble stars, of course the NBA has also decided to name a bubble All-American bubble team and an MVP as well. So let's hope it's one of my choices.
Yeah. So. So we're gonna transition now to the worst bubble players. So I'll get started with that. So for me, it is Pascal Siakam, who's kind of really struggling. He's only scored 14 points and 11 points. Kyle Lowry has been the best player and really carrying this Raptors team. Number 2 for me is Brandon Ingram. He's only scored 11 points, and I believe one game he only scored 12 points, which is not good enough. And he's not doing a great job of leading this Pelicans team into the playoffs as many people may thought. But I don't blame Brandon Ingram as much because they're really trying to go through Zion, and maybe that would have disrupted his rhythm a little bit because Brandon Ingram has been the go-to player from the majority of the season with Zion out. So maybe he's a little discombobulated. And my number 1 player is a guy that left the bubble to go to the gentleman's club, Lou Williams. He's only scored 6 points and 7 points. You got to be kidding me. Like, Lou Williams, you're supposed to be the best 6-man in the NBA, and the Clippers really rely on you off the bench. So Lou Williams definitely has to be better, but he's my worst bubble player so far. Mr. Kumar, who's your list?
Before I go to my list, I would like to discuss what the audience has picked because you can see that I think most people have picked the LeBron James to be like probably the worst performances in the bubble. But I think that's also because because there's too much of expectation from a player like LeBron James. Because every time he steps onto the court, everybody thinks that he has to be scoring 30 points and he has to lead his team. But I mean, the Lakers had already got the #1 seed just 2 games into this bubble experiment. So I mean, they didn't really have to win a lot of games. So they did try and experiment. But I also have him at my number 3 position, and for the same reasons, because he is my favorite player, and I expect him to be aggressive. I expect him to be having superlative performances each and every game. But that hasn't happened. And my number 2 is Jason Tatum. Of course, he's had the last couple of games, he's probably improved his performance, and that's why Boston is performing as they have in the last week. But I think the first week, he had some very forgettable performances, especially that first game, against Milwaukee Bucks, I think. But I think, he needs to be the leader on the floor. He needs to perform well if the Boston Celtics really need to have a chance of going deep into the playoffs. And number one, I think there's no surprises there for you, Mr. Patel. I also picked Lou Williams. The only reason is, of course, he's had 6 points in the first game. He had 12 points in the second game. He improved it to 14 points in the third. But he did get up to 23 points, up almost his average in the fourth game. So maybe it's just put him off that entire going out of the bubble and having a different bubble experience. But let's hope that, he comes through for the LA Clippers team, because he's been probably the mainstay in terms of the LA Clippers doing so well last season. And of course, this season, we'll have to see how they do it in the playoffs.
Yeah, and Mr. Kumar, that was very objective of you to put LeBron at number 3, because he was initially on my list, but I'm like, LeBron goes into that zero dark 30 mode in the playoffs, and I think he's going to flip that switch. I think he's just waiting, for the playoffs, and I expect him to play at that same level that he's been playing in his career in this season. So I think he's definitely going to flip the switch. I do agree that Jason Tatum has underachieved, for the Boston Celtics, but luckily, Jaylen Brown and Gordon Hayward has really picked up the slack for him. So I think because the Celtics have other scorers and other players that they can rely on, that's why I think Jason Tatum can have a couple of off games, but those other players can, carry the load and carry the mantle until Jason Tatum comes back. Because as you said, the Celtics aren't going anywhere without Jason Tatum. He needs to play at that MVP level that he's been playing throughout the season in order for the Boston Celtics to be successful in the playoffs.
Well, let's hope LeBron James has another 50-point performance like he did, I think, 2 years ago against the Golden State. But they lost that game, but I think he'll be on the winning side this time. So let's move on to our next section, which is probably the spiciest section in the entire YouTube, and that is the Indian Tadka. Ooh, it's getting spicier and hotter, Mr. Patel, because we have a great segment in the Indian Tadka today, and we're going to be discussing whether Indian origin players from other countries can play for the Indian national team. Of course, it's a highly debatable topic, and we have a wonderful guest also. What do you think about Indian origin players playing for the national team, Mr. Patel?
I think there's the argument that can be for both sides. First of all, you want to make the, team stronger. And there's a lot of talented, Indian origin players that are, abroad that are not in India. So if you want to make the team stronger in order to compete, I think there's an argument for allowing those players to come in. But also for the other side, you want to kind of develop your local, Indian players. And there's something been said that like breeding your local Indian players and develop them to be able to, represent their country. But I think that there are, arguments for both sides. And I don't think you can, go wrong either way. And I think we'll see, if the rule ends up getting changed, because India does not, allow dual citizenship. So it's a very interesting question.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with you there, because I also feel it's a double-edged sword right there, because there's a possibility that, of course, you want to have the best team possible so that they can compete and probably qualify for, the Asian Championships or the Olympic qualifiers, etc. But at the same time, what happens to a lot of the other Indian players who probably, won't get that opportunity to play for India because you have Indian origin players coming into play for the Indian team. But I think it can be, we can have a balance, having maybe just a couple of players, because FIBA does allow naturalization of 2 players every year.
Okay.
And that's what some of the other Asian teams have also done, which we will discuss once, in the later part of the show. But I think let's move on, because we had a great guest with us the other day. He couldn't come live on the show. So We had Inderbir Singh Gill, who was probably one of the top players in Canadian college basketball. He won the MVP, he made the All-Star team there. And of course, a lot of people know about his struggles of trying to play for the Indian national team, and he did play in the Indian circuit. So we will show you an interview with Inderbir Singh Gill and come back and discuss more about whether Indian origin players can play for the Indian national team. Hey, welcome to the spiciest section on YouTube at the Patel and Kumar NBA talk show, the Indian Tadka. And we have none other than Inderbir Singh Gill, one of the best point guards I've seen play in India. And of course, he did try immensely to get into the Indian national team, but he was born in India, went to the United States, played the college basketball in Canada. He was a star there. Welcome, Inderbir Singh Gill. Thank you very much for being here today. On behalf of Patel and Kumar, we are so excited for you to have on the show.
Welcome.
Thank you guys, man. Thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be on the Patel and Kumar show, man. I'm so excited. Let's get this thing going.
So, Mr. Patel, please do the honors of asking the question.
All right, let's get started. I'm excited to have you here, Inderbir. So my first question I wanted to ask was, like Vinod said, you were a star in college basketball in Canada. You won the championship, MVPs. You won the Canadian National Player, Male Player of the Year. So kind of tell us how that experience was like playing college basketball at a high level in Canada.
It was great, bro. Growing up, it was just a dream to play college basketball. And once you get to that point, you work so hard to get there and you want to win at that level. And I was so lucky to have such great teammates and coaching staff that, we all came together in 2010 and we had a great team. And, honestly, we had a great run in the playoffs that we were able to win it. And that feeling of winning the national championship is, one of the best feelings in the world. I'll never forget that. And, the bond that we had with that team is, never to be forgotten. And it's, cemented for lifetime. Even now, I was just talking to one of my teammates, from the championship team just 2 days ago. And we were just talking about our, championship run. And this is 10 years later. So, it was just amazing team, and really I was grateful to be a part of that team, and I was blessed to be able to win it and win the MVP and Player of the Year.
Well, that's great, Inderbir. But I mean, of course, since it's the Indian Tadka section, we have to talk about your connection with India. You were born in Hoshiarpur in Punjab, then moved on to the US. What inspired you to basically come back to India?
Well, I always, have obviously, Indian roots, and my mom and my family, they're very proud to be Indian. My mom was a Punjabi she was a principal and also a Punjabi lecturer in India. So here, she didn't want us to forget our Indian roots, so we always spoke in Punjabi and watched Hindi movies. And, I was just actually watching the Kapil Sharma show before we got on here. So those roots are kind of always stuck with me. And one thing I wanted to do was, man, this game has, given me so much. And I was in India before I wanted to, come back to India, like, when I was growing up in college and things like that. Every time I would come back to India, I would see some of the players playing basketball. And I realized, man, how unlucky they are to be in India and playing because they don't get any opportunities. So, when I kind of made up my mind at that time, I think this was 2007 when the first time I came back to India after, being in US, and I went to the Ludhiana Basketball Academy, which is, probably the best academy in India. And I've seen the conditions there, man. It was, eye-opening, man. And, people and players there, they're just living it and they don't have a problem with it because they haven't seen anything better. And the sad part is if that's the best academy in India and that's where pretty much all the talent comes out of, and people are still making it to the G Leagues and then to the NBA, then I was just thinking, what could happen if we actually had better infrastructure and coaching and just better opportunities for the players. So for me, that giving back to the game was a big part of me coming back to India, and also I was just I'm a proud Indian, so I want to give back to the game, and I wanted to play for the Indian team because they suck right now, so they could definitely use the help.
I'm sure of that. They definitely need like a good point guard. I mean, of course we have the shooting guards and the forwards and stuff like that. But yeah.
That's I've seen that too. That's one big aspect that's missing in Indian basketball, which is true point guard. Just a point guard position in general. We do have a lot of bigs, like Satnam, Paul Preet, Amrit Paul. All these guys are great, but they don't have anybody to give them the ball in scoring positions.
Yeah.
So we often struggle at that time.
Well, I mean, let's move on to I think what is more relevant for the audience here. I mean. The whole topic was like a country like India doesn't naturalize, players, and when you first came into India, you really were ambitious enough in terms of you wanted to play for the Indian team. You tried, so much in terms of trying to get the rules changed and stuff like that. I mean, how were your struggles, and and what made you think that a person like you who is now a U.S. citizen gets to play for India?
It's been really tough, man. Because when I was playing in college and I graduated in 2011, I was coming out of Canada as the best player in the country. And at that time, I remember contacting Karan, who runs the Hoopistani page, right? And he did an article on me, and I told him that I want to play for the team, Indian national team. And he used to work for BFI at that time, and he was my first link to Indian basketball. And, he talked to everyone in charge, and everybody said no, right? But they just say no. They don't want to make the changes because, to be honest, I wouldn't say nobody, the people in power of basketball in India, they don't really care about the development and the growth of the game. So, if they don't really care, it doesn't matter to them if they want to make the, Indian basketball better. They don't really care because they're making money or whatever they're getting, they're satisfied with it. So they don't have no incentive to do anything about it. So I was always kind of stuck in the middle, always trying to figure out answers, and I never got them. So it was really frustrating.
I'm really sorry to hear that. I know, yes, the federation, the government, the sports authority, everybody needs to work on developing basketball. But yeah, but yes, a lot of the Asian countries, they end up naturalizing players because Japan does it. A lot of the Middle Eastern countries like Qatar, Jordan, Iraq, Syria. They all do it.
Oh man, if you look at Philippines, we were there last year playing in the Philippines league, and they're naturalizing players that have zero Filipino ethnicity
connection
or any connection. So if you look at what's the guy's name, Andre Balach, he has zero connection to Philippines, man, and he plays. Jordan Clarkson plays for the Philippines national team.
Yeah.
Right, and if you look at the culture of basketball in Philippines, it may be the best culture in anywhere in the world. And obviously their basketball level has grown throughout the years. So I don't understand why India, just because of politics, and what I hear is because of back in 2007, it was I guess some politician's son who was a shooter didn't make it to the team, and that politician got the rule changed. Pardon me if I'm wrong, but that's how I guess the rule came in. But if that's the case, it's really, excuse my language, but it's bullshit.
Well, it's a YouTube show, so you're free. There's no censor board here. So Shivam, go ahead.
So so I just wanted to ask you on some personal questions. So what is your favorite NBA team and kind of player that you like to follow?
I don't have a favorite NBA team, but I do have a favorite NBA player, which is LeBron James. So I kind of just follow his career. When he was with Cleveland, I was a Cleveland fan. When he went to Miami, And
just tell Shivam that he's the best player on earth and just forget about it.
uh,
That's how it is.
I know you just recently watched the Michael Jordan documentary, and you may be swayed because of that. But in all honesty, I think LeBron James is the best player of all time, and I
He's the
really
GOAT.
stand by that. I really believe he's the GOAT.
If he wins another championship, he would have won three championships with three different teams. He definitely has an argument. I think that's for sure.
Right. I think this year, even though they're not looking good right now, but they have a great shot this year. So hopefully, fingers crossed. So we can shut up all the haters.
We're gonna make everyone wear goat mask if he wins the championship.
Right. I agree.
Shannon Sharp, goat mask.
Well, I'm going to ask you a controversial question, and your opinion on that is basically, a lot of Indian origin players maybe try to come back to India, but if they would have been successful in getting like a professional contract in the US or Canada or some other country, I don't even think they would be looking at coming to India and playing for the national team. Do you think, it's, like a chicken and egg story, right? Whether Indian origin players should play for the Indian team, or or the Indian players think it actually cancels our chances of playing for the Indian team, right? So what do you feel about that?
Well, I'm going to be biased, but I actually really do believe that if you want the game to grow, you need the best talent there, right? That's one of the best ways to grow the game. And I would disagree with you, Vinod, because I do think if players had the opportunity, like NRIs had the opportunity to come back and play for the Indian national team, I think a lot of players would. And I know a lot of players that have that do play professionally right now, and that would love the chance to play represent India. So I think I know for a fact that if NRIs are able to play, we can boost the level of play not only for the Indian national team but also throughout the country, because when you see better competition, the Indian players that are playing with these NRIs, they're going to get better. And when they go back to their respective states, they can teach the other players. I was kind of blown away, when I first come to India and I see some of the national team guys, man, their fundamentals are as weak as probably a middle school player here. So it's really kind of like sad and also like really kind of frustrating, because these guys like Paul Preet and Amit Paul, Satnam, these guys are still able to go to great heights and without being fundamentally strong until they get to this either US or wherever they're playing. So I think it would definitely help Indian basketball. I'm sure some Indian national players will lose their jobs because that's the only way or they will lose their spot on the national team. But overall, I think it would be a great thing for Indian basketball to have NRIs play.
I wanted to get your thoughts, Inderbir, about Principal Singh, getting selected for the G League team. What are your thoughts about him going forward in his future and his potential?
Well, first of all, man, I'm super, super excited that he actually is getting this opportunity, man. I the first time I saw him was in junior NBA back in 2016. And I think he was 16 years old at that time, or 15, and he was super raw, really skinny, no fundamentals, and really soft. And to see his growth in the last 4 years, and I actually seen him play the year before last. I met him at in JP Greens in Noida. To see his growth in the last 4 years, I'm so happy and so proud of that kid. Because he came a long ways. I'm sure he put in a lot of hard work, and the NBA Academy in India did a great job of kind of nurturing him and modeling him into a great athlete that he is now. So I'm very excited for him, and I wish him all the best that he can make the roster and then hopefully make it to the NBA soon.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, I think that's a silver lining in Indian basketball. We're hearing the news of Prince Paul getting signed by the G League, and we covered him in our first episode, and we just hope he goes on to play in the NBA at some point in time. But
wish him all the best.
But thank you, thank you very much for your time, Inderbir. It was really a pleasure talking to you. Of course, we are looking forward to for you to come back to India. And of course, you're working as a technical director now in a basketball institute. And we hope that, you could, inspire some kids to probably become like Prince Paul or just like you, and even playing college basketball, So,
Yeah.
I mean, all the best to you, and hope to see you soon. And thank you very much for your views, Inderbir.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks, guys, for having me on the show. I'll be tuning in to watch all the episodes and, talk about, listen to you guys talk about the NBA and other topics, within the Indian basketball community. So, man, good luck with you, to you guys with the show, man. I think it's a great thing that you guys are doing. So, I'll be watching.
All right. Thank you, Inderbir. I hope everyone enjoyed that interview. And it was great hearing his thoughts about Indian basketball and being excluded from the Indian national team. So I want to give a shout out to Vallabh Trivedi for posting a comment on the Patel Kumar Instagram page, and also to Srinaz Trivedi for posting a comment on YouTube. And remember, if you want a shout out on the show, either post to the Patel and Kumar Instagram or Twitter page, or post on YouTube and Facebook. So back to our conversation. So Mr. Kumar, I have some NBA prominent examples of players who were not born in a country, but they're representing them in international play. And as Inderbir said, the first couple of names that come to mind are Jordan Clarkson and Andre Blatch that played for the Philippines. Also, some other examples are Becky Hammond, who played for the Russian national team. And recently, Spencer Dinwiddie, who just now got a Nigerian passport, and he will represent Nigeria in the qualifiers for the Olympics next year. So what are your thoughts about these kind of examples, Mr. Kumar?
Well, I mean, the rules are very clear in India. Of course, they don't naturalize players. Of course, maybe it's a part of another sport, and that's why basketball is suffering. So it's a very hard question, but I would definitely like to see a mix. Maybe we have 2 or 3 Indian NRIs or Indian origin players, as you say, playing in the national team along with 7 or 8 other guys. So, as Malini Hemraj points out, those are interesting facts. And thank you, Malini, for writing in, and please keep tuning into our show. So it's, yeah, I mean, I would like to have a good mix. And, sometimes players like, Inderbir would have been a great inspiration for some of the other players, and the work ethic and, all those kind of things. So even Srinivas Trivedi has drawn up an Indian dream team, which is Inderbir and Vishesh Brigwanshi as a shooting guard, Hafiz as a small forward, Amjod, as a power forward, and Amritpal as a center. So I think we'll have to do a segment where we have an Indian dream team selection, something like that. But, so let's hope, I mean, the rules change and we are able to see some good, there are some good college basketball players in the US as well, of Indian origin, who have played in the D1. They've done decently well. And if they get a chance, probably they can come back and play for India.
Yes, and like you said, some D1 players maybe that come to mind are like a Varun Ram, like an Inderbir, and these players, like Inderbir said clearly in the interview, that he's proud, to be Indian, and he wants to represent the national team. So I feel like you need those kind of players that will represent, India in the right way, and they really want to play for India to help grow the basketball and make India successful. So in our poll, should Indian origin players be allowed to play on the national team? It seems like 86% of the audience said yes and 14% said no. So that's very interesting poll right there, Mr. Kumar.
Yeah, I think of those, I think all the people who voted for the 86%, they would have probably been followers of Inderbir Singh. I think so. That's what I'm hoping for, So a huge shout out to Inderbir Singh and his struggles, but he's now working as a coach, and let's hope that he inspires some kids to probably go on to the next level.
Yes, and that's what it's all about. Caring, teaching the next generation, and inspiring kids to want to play basketball, to be able to want to represent their country. And what a better guy to do it, than Inderbir Singh, who, like you said, he had very much success, in college and playing on the 3-on-3, basketball league in India and in the world team. So he's had a very successful career and a lot of basketball knowledge that he'll be able to carry on to the younger generation. So I'm definitely excited to see his great work.
Yeah, so let's just move on with the show and move on to our next section, and that is where I'm going to be the winner, is the pick'em section, because I got 7-0 last time, Mr. Patel.
Oh, don't
7-0.
Don't let that get to your head, Mr. Kumar. We got another week. I could make a comeback, which I definitely am. And this week, we only got the rest of the games today, and then tomorrow before we start the playoffs. And they are going to be some play-in games on Saturday and possibly on Sunday before the playoffs are going to start August 17th. So let's go over these games. So on August 13th, we got Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks against John Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies. For me, I picked the Memphis Grizzlies because I think they're going to have that hunger to want to get into the play-in tournament. So who do you got, Mr. Kumar?
I picked the Milwaukee, easy choice. Number 1 team against the number 9 team. So even without Giannis, they're probably going to win this game.
All right, and also on August 13th, we got Luka Doncic, the Kristaps Porzingis, and the Dallas Mavericks against one of the hottest teams in the NBA in the bubble, Devin Booker and the Phoenix Suns. For me, I got the Phoenix Suns. I think they see the light at the end of the tunnel, and Devin Booker is going to have another huge game.
Phoenix for me as well, because they have the hot hand right now, and I think they're going to continue with their momentum.
All right, on Friday, August 14th, we got the Philadelphia 76ers, who may or may not be with Joel Embiid, against James Harden and Russell Westbrook and the Houston Rockets. For me, I got the Rockets. I think James Harden is going to have a big game, and the Rockets are going to bounce back and make a lot of threes to overwhelm this depleted 76ers team. Who do you got?
I think it's an inconsequential game because both teams are pretty much locked in with their playoff, contenders. So, but I go with Houston as well because there's no Embiid, there's no Simmons, so it's an easy choice for me.
All right, we got the Oklahoma City Thunder and Chris Paul against Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and the Los Angeles Clippers. I personally got the Oklahoma City Thunder because I think the Clippers are going to rest Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and I think the Thunder are going to play some of their starters, and they have a lot of talent with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Darius Bazley, and Daniel Gallinari are going to bring it home for the W.
OKC for me as well because I think the Clippers are going to rest most of their stars. They probably give Montrezl Harrell and Lou Williams probably more game time because Harrell has not been playing at all in this bubble, and he's probably just made a comeback. So let's hope that he gets into rhythm because they really need a person like Harrell to, make a comeback.
Yes. So in our last game, we got Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic in the Denver Nuggets against Pascal Siakam and Kyle Lowry and the Toronto Raptors. For me, I got the Denver Nuggets because even though, the Toronto Raptors did clinch the second seed, they're going to rest their starters. But I think Gary Harris, Michael Porter Jr., and Will Barton are going to play because those guys have been in and out of the lineup, and I think they're going to try to get their feet underneath them and get that little rhythm before the playoffs. Who do you got, Mr. Kumar?
I got Toronto, but again, I think both teams are going to rest their mainstream players, and it's an inconsequential game, right? So it's more like a scrimmage game, but I still pick the Toronto, the second lineup to be better than Denver.
Yeah, and Toronto is definitely, deep. And I think, they're not going to play, like you said, their main starters because they are kind of getting ready for the playoffs. And no need to risk an injury, when they already got it clinched. And Denver Nuggets, ended up losing to the LA Clippers last night. And they're pretty much clinched the third seed. All right, now for the audience poll. So it seems like, 82% of everyone said they agree with you, Mr. Kumar, that said the Bucks are going to beat the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yes, it's a pretty easy choice. So that's why they agree.
All right. 53% say the Mavericks are going to beat the Phoenix Suns, and which is surprising because the Suns are one of the hottest teams right now playing in the bubble.
Yeah, I think it's just the fan following for Doncic, and I think that's why people have chosen the Mavs. But I think it's a 50-50 out here. But we both have got the Suns.
All right, and then no surprise here, 84% say the Rockets are going to win, which Sixers are going to be without Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, and Rockets are at full strength, so that's no surprise here. Rockets are supposed to win this game.
Absolutely.
All right, 69% say the Clippers are going to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, and we got a comment from Soham Gupta asking Mr. Patel, where's the Raptors support gone? And I still support the Toronto Raptors, and I still think they are coming out of the East, Soham. But I think the Raptors are already kind of just resting for the playoffs because they already know that they got the second seed clinched. And I think they'll get their full starters already, and I think that they're not going to take the last couple seeding games seriously in anticipation for the playoffs.
Oh, well, the whole world knows that you're a Raptors fan, and probably the whole world will know that I'm going to give a big, big parade in Mumbai if the Toronto Raptors win the Eastern Conference Finals, if they do come there, of course. So anyway, I think I'm going to pick the Raptors in the last game against the Denver Nuggets.
And it seems like the audience agrees with you, Mr. Kumar. 75% say the Raptors are going to win. But I'm going to be the one that's going to get the last laugh when the Raptors come out of the Eastern Conference.
Let me tell you, the audience is just smart to go behind me because I got the 7-0 in the last pick'em choices. You know that, right?
Yes. So that'll change next week, Mr. Kumar. The audience is going to be behind me, and I'm gonna get the support. But that's.
I think we're gonna run a poll where who's gonna get more wins in the pick'em section. Is it gonna be Mr. Kumar or is it gonna be Mr. Patel?
And it's definitely going to be Mr. Patel. If you want the safe pick, the correct picks, go with Mr. Patel in the playoffs.
Of course, and thank you very much, everybody, for writing in on the live chats. It just makes it more interesting for us. And of course, connect with us on our Twitter and Instagram handles at Patel and Kumar. Keep writing to us, and maybe you get featured on the show next week. But before we leave, we always probably leave on a lighter note so that people are laughing all the way. And this is the Indian meme, and as you can see, thanks to Desi Baller Memes, this is the condition of the Indian basketball or Indian fans, waiting for the 5-on-5 Pro League. I think I'm going to look like that by the time the Indian Pro League starts, Mr. Patel.
That's pretty clever, Mr. Kumar. And India is definitely, wanting a pro league, and I think they're eventually going to, get one. Right now, I know the 3-on-3 pro league is right now currently, and I heard, it's gotten a huge amount of success and great following. So I think they're in the works and building of a 5-on-5 pro league, and that's something that I'll definitely tune in to for sure to watch.
Well, what do you got on the US meme, Mr. Patel?
So
is there a surprise for me?
Yes, Mr. Kumar, I got a special treat for you. Your favorite player, LeBron James, who you say is the GOAT and is going to be coming out of the Western Conference. So my meme is LeBron James did get swept twice by the 2007 San Antonio Spurs. Go, Spurs, go! And the 2017 Golden State Warriors with Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, and Kevin Durant. So, Mr. Kumar, what do you say about this meme?
Do you really want to go with this one just before the playoffs start, Mr. Patel? Because anyway, I would advise you to frame this picture because these are the only two teams that are ever going to sweep Mr. LeBron James, and you're never going to see that again. So this is pretty special, and I think I'm going to have a meme right after the end of the season where I'm gonna where we are all wearing goat masks, as I said.
You're gonna go Shannon Sharp, Mr. Kumar, and we're the goat mask. Oh.
I'm just gonna go Mr. Kumar. I'm gonna wear the goat mask. I'm gonna go wear the goat jacket. Everything. I mean, because I'm just declaring him as the goat. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone. Connect with us on Twitter and Instagram at Patel and Kumar, and of course, watch us live every Thursday, 7 p.m. Tune in, set your reminders. Don't do anything. Don't keep any appointments. 7 p.m. every Thursday because you got to tune in to the Patel and Kumar NBA talk show.
And there's no other place to be on Thursday at 7 p.m. India time. Now with the playoffs getting started, the best analysis, the best predictions, the best storylines are here on the Patel and Kumar show. And I would like to thank, everybody for tuning in and all the comments on all the social media platforms. I would like to thank you to Mr. Kumar. I always enjoy our great conversations and debates. I would like to thank our technical team of Mr. Tushar Patel, Gopal, and Anamish. And everyone will see y'all next week.
And yeah, please like, share, and subscribe to the Ekalavyas YouTube channel if you want to watch this show every Thursday. Thank you, and have a good night, people from India, and have a very good day for the people tuned in from the United States.
Yes, and before one more thing, you could also check the Patel and Kumar show on the podcast on all the major platforms of Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. So you can't get more, or you can't get enough of the Patel and Kumar show. Got
Playoff
playoff
time!